She used to be a protector, a loyal K-9 officer who once chased down criminals and saved lives. But now, she was broken, abandoned, trapped in a rusted snare behind a gas station, crying for anyone to notice her. Dozens passed by, no one stopped, except for one man. He didn't know it yet, but what he was about to do would save her life, and what she did next would tear his heart wide open. Before I show you what this incredible dog did next, can I ask you one small thing? If you believe no animal should be thrown away and forgotten, and that dogs deserve love, not pain, please hit that subscribe button. Most people scroll past stories like this, but your one click could help this message reach someone who needs to hear it. It was early, not just morning early, but that quiet, in-between kind of early, the hour when the streetlights are still glowing dimly, and the world hasn't fully woken up yet. The kind of early where the roads are empty, the air is still, and even the birds seem to hesitate before singing. Everything feels paused, suspended in time, frozen by the cold and silence. Daniel Brooks was already behind the wheel of his old blue pickup truck, windows slightly fogged from the chill outside. The defroster was humming low, trying to fight the stubborn bite of the late winter air. He took a sip of his coffee, not hot enough to warm him, just warm enough to stop him from tossing it out the window. Same route, same gas station, same slow radio playing classic rock hits on low volume. Daniel wasn't expecting anything different that day. He never did. His life was steady, quiet, maybe even a little dull. Construction work paid the bills. The mornings were routine. The truck always smelled faintly of oil and metal. He liked it that way. But that morning, something was off. As he passed the corner gas station, the one with the flickering neon open sign and the busted vending machine outside, something caught the corner of his eye. Something behind the building. Something that shouldn't have been there. It looked like trash at first. Maybe an old blanket or a torn garbage bag, half covered in wind-blown leaves and debris. But then it moved. He frowned. Daniel slowed the truck. For a second, he thought maybe it was a raccoon or some stray animal. That wouldn't have been new. Stray cats often lingered near that dumpster. They scurried off the moment anyone came close. But this was different. There was no scampering, no quick movement, just a twitch. A slow, sad twitch, the kind that didn't come from fear. It came from exhaustion. Then came the sound, faint, fragile, almost like someone crying. Not loud, not desperate, just quiet, weak. Daniel's gut twisted. He made a snap decision, one he wouldn't even understand until much later. He pulled over. No hesitation. He just parked, killed the engine, and stepped out. The cold hit him instantly, and the gravel crunched under his boots as he rounded the side of the building. He didn't know what he expected to see, but it definitely wasn't this. Behind the dumpster, huddled in the shadows, was a dog. A German shepherd, or what was left of one. She was curled tightly, her body trembling so hard it almost looked like she was convulsing. Her fur was dirty, clumped, matted with dried blood and grime. Her ribs poked out beneath her skin, each breath shallow and shaky. And then he saw her leg. Her front paw was caught, mangled in a twisted metal snare, rusted and sharp, the kind of trap people weren't supposed to use anymore. Illegal, dangerous, hidden in plain sight. Her eyes met his, big, golden brown eyes that had seen too much. Not wild, not afraid, just tired. So tired. Daniel froze. He'd seen pain before. He'd broken his share of bones, lost friends to construction site accidents. But this was different. This was quiet pain, lingering pain, the kind of pain that doesn't scream. It just waits for someone to care. She didn't bark, didn't growl. She didn't make a sound now. Just watched him, not pleading, not begging, just waiting. Daniel crouched slowly, his voice barely above a whisper. Hey there, easy now. I'm not gonna hurt you. She didn't move. He took another step closer. Still nothing. He could now see that the trap had been cutting into her for a while. The wire had sliced into the skin above her paw, and dried blood clung to her fur like rust. Flies buzzed nearby. The smell of infection lingered in the air. How long had she been like this? Hours? Days? Had anyone else seen her? Had they just walked away? The thought made his stomach turn. Daniel stood and hurried back to his truck. He popped open the toolbox in the bed, rummaging through screwdrivers, pliers, an old wrench set, tools he used every day for work. But now, they were for something else entirely. He rushed back, crouched down again, and started working on the trap. The metal was rusted stiff. Every twist made the dog flinch, but she never pulled away. Her trust in him was unsettling, like she had already decided. This one won't hurt me. He spoke to her gently the entire time. You're okay now. You're safe. Just a little more. Each time the wire gave way, exposed more damage. Her paw was raw, swollen, possibly broken, and still, she didn't make a sound. 15 minutes passed. Finally, the last loop of wire came loose. The trap snapped open with a tired clang, and Daniel pulled it aside, tossing it toward the dumpster in disgust. But instead of running, the dog didn't move. She looked at her paw, then back at Daniel, and then, slowly leaned forward. She pressed her head into his chest. Just like that. No fear, no hesitation, as if she had been waiting for someone like him, as if she was saying, "I can't do this anymore. Please." Daniel didn't say a word. He just wrapped his arms around her. Daniel held her there for a moment, not tightly, not like a hug, just support. Her body was still trembling, not from fear now, but from something else. Relief maybe, or maybe shock. He couldn't tell. What kind of life had she lived before this? And who lets a dog, any dog, get to this point? He wasn't thinking about that yet. Right now, there was only one thing that mattered, getting her help. He slid off his heavy flannel jacket and wrapped it around her gently. She was lighter than he expected, far too light for a German shepherd, bones where muscle should have been, for missing in patches. But even in this broken state, there was something regal about her, something dignified, like a fallen soldier in need of rescue. Daniel carried her to the truck. As he opened the door, she didn't resist, didn't panic, didn't whimper. She just rested her head against his chest, like she was done fighting, like she was handing over the weight of her pain to someone else. He placed her in the passenger seat, turned the heat up, and laid his jacket over her like a blanket. The local vet was about 10 minutes away. Daniel knew them well, not because he had pets, but because he did work for them occasionally, replacing drywall, fixing fences, patching up cracks. They knew him. They'd help. As he drove, he glanced at her every few seconds. She was still, not unconscious, just quiet, alert. Their eyes met again, and Daniel said softly, "Hang in there, girl." Almost there. When he pulled into the vet's lot, the sky was just beginning to turn from gray to pale orange. The clinic hadn't opened yet, but Daniel didn't wait. He ran to the door, knocked hard, then rang the bell twice. After a minute or two, a tired-looking vet tech opened the door, hoodie on, coffee in hand. She blinked when she saw him. "Daniel, what?" He stepped aside, pointing toward the truck. "I found her behind the gas station. She's in bad shape. Can you take her now?" The tech looked at the truck, then at Daniel, then back again. Her expression changed instantly. "Bring her in." They rushed. A gurney was wheeled out. Daniel lifted the dog carefully onto it. Still, she didn't resist. The tech stroked her head gently. "What happened to you, sweet girl?" Inside, the team worked quickly, for fluids, pain meds, antibiotics. They examined her leg, cleaned her wounds, ran blood work. Daniel stood off to the side, unsure if he should stay, but he didn't leave. He couldn't. After about 20 minutes, the vet walked over to him, clipboard in hand, a concerned look on her face. "She's lucky you found her when you did," the vet said. "Another few hours in that trap, and she could have lost a leg, or worse." Daniel nodded, jaw clenched. He didn't trust himself to speak. The vet continued, "She's severely malnourished, signs of long-term neglect. But here's the thing, she's chipped." Daniel's eyes widened. "She is?" "Yeah." The chips registered to the police department. Daniel's heart stopped for a second. "The police?" The vet nodded. "She's a retired K9. Her name is Roxy." Roxy. It was strange, hearing it said out loud. This wasn't just a dog anymore. She had a name, a title, a history. She had been trained to serve, to protect, to put herself in danger, and someone somewhere had just tossed her away like she meant nothing. Daniel felt something rise in his chest, anger mixed with heartbreak. "What happened to her?" he asked. The vet flipped a few pages on her clipboard. "She served in Metro for 3 years, assigned to Officer James Keller. They were partners until he died in a car crash last year. After that, she was retired." Daniel leaned in. "And then what?" "She was adopted out to a civilian. That's where the trail goes cold. No more records, no checkups, no follow-ups. So that was it. A hero turned into a stray. Used up, thrown out, forgotten." Daniel looked through the glass at Roxy, lying on the exam table, her eyes now closed, body wrapped in bandages and warm towels. She had given everything, and this was how she was repaid. That thought stuck with him the rest of the day. He didn't go to work. He called in, told them he had an emergency. He didn't leave the vet's office either. Just sat in the lobby, waiting, thinking. It wasn't pity. It wasn't just guilt. It was something deeper, a connection he couldn't explain. Maybe because Roxy didn't ask for anything. Maybe because she didn't bark or whine or demand attention. She just existed, quietly, broken, but still whole in some strange way. Late that afternoon, the vet approached him again. "We're going to keep her overnight," she said. "But Daniel, if no one comes forward, would you consider taking her home? At least during her recovery?" Daniel didn't hesitate. "Yes, absolutely." And with that one word, his entire life quietly shifted. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. He tried, laid in bed, flipped the pillow, closed his eyes. But every time he did, he saw her face. Those eyes, that stillness, the way she had leaned into him, like she hadn't felt safe in months. And the trap, that cursed trap, he kept replaying the moment over and over in his head. What if he hadn't looked that way? What if he hadn't stopped? What if she died out there? The next morning, Daniel was already waiting outside the vet's office before they opened, coffee in hand. Same jacket, same look of quiet determination on his face. The tech smiled when she saw him. "She's awake. You can see her." He stepped into the recovery room and froze. Roxy was lying on a soft blanket in the corner, her leg bandaged and propped up gently. Her ears perked the second she saw him. No bark, no wag, but her eyes lit up, like recognition, like trust. Daniel sat beside her and gently stroked her fur. "Morning, soldier," he whispered. The vet came in a moment later. "She's stable, still weak, but strong enough to go home if you're ready for the responsibility. She'll need daily meds, soft food, rest, and patience." Daniel looked down at her again. "I've got plenty of that." They filled out the paperwork. The department was contacted again, but no one stepped up. No one came. No one claimed her. She was officially retired, officially forgotten, until now. Back at Daniel's small house on the edge of town, Roxy had her own space. He laid out blankets, set a water bowl next to her bed, cooked a bit of boiled chicken and rice for her first meal. At first, she didn't eat. She just looked around, taking in the silence, the unfamiliar furniture, the smell of wood and metal and earth. But eventually, she limped over to the bowl and took a bite, small, careful, then another, and another. By the end of the day, her tail wagged once, just once, but it was something. The first week wasn't easy. She was still healing, still unsure. She flinched when Daniel dropped a wrench in the garage. She tensed up at the sound of a car backfiring. Sometimes she paced at night, walking in slow, nervous circles by the front door, like she was waiting for someone or something. Daniel never forced anything. He just sat nearby, talked to her in that calm, low voice, told her stories about his day, tossed a soft tennis ball near her bed now and then, never too close. Sometimes she ignored it, sometimes she just stared at it. But once, after a few days, she nudged it back with her nose. Daniel didn't cheer or clap. He just smiled. Atta girl. One night, Daniel was watching TV when he noticed Roxy staring at the door. Not pacing, just staring. He paused the show and listened. Then he heard it too. Footsteps. Slow, heavy. Before he could stand, Roxy rose to her feet, not with fear, but purpose. She moved to the door, head high, tail still, ears alert. Daniel followed behind her and peeked out the window. There was a man stumbling across his lawn, drunk maybe, or just confused. Roxy barked once, sharp, deep, loud. The man froze, then turned and stumbled away. Daniel stood there in silence. She hadn't forgotten. That training, that instinct, still there. But more importantly, she had made a choice. She chose to protect him, even now, even after everything. The days rolled into weeks. Roxy's leg began to heal. The limp lessened. Her appetite returned. She started following Daniel from room to room. She'd sit next to him in the garage while he worked on his truck, wait by the door when he took the trash out, lay by the bed every night like a silent guardian. Every day, she came a little more alive. And Daniel, a man who had never wanted a dog, never asked for one, started to realize something. He needed her too. But one afternoon, that peace shattered again. Daniel had stepped outside to grab something from the truck. When he returned, Roxy was gone. The front door was cracked open. Panic set in instantly. He ran down the street, calling her name, asked neighbors, drove in circles. 30 minutes passed, then an hour. His heart pounded harder with each passing minute. What if someone had taken her? What if she'd gotten hurt again? Then, just as the sun was setting, he saw her, across the street, behind a small market, near the dumpster, curled up, just like the first time. Daniel rushed over, but when he got close, he stopped, because he realized something heartbreaking. She wasn't running away. She was remembering. She was lying in the exact same position she had been in when he found her. Same posture, same angle, like her body remembered even if her mind didn't mean to. Daniel knelt beside her, heart heavy. Hey, it's okay. You're not there anymore. You're with me now. Her eyes met his again, and slowly she stood up, walked to him, and for the first time, she licked his hand. That night, Daniel sat with her on the porch. It was quiet, the stars were out, a breeze passed softly through the trees. Roxy lay beside his chair, head on her paws, eyes half closed, but not sleeping, just calm. Daniel stared out into the dark street and asked a question he hadn't let himself ask out loud until now. What did they do to you? Roxy didn't move, but her ears twitched, like she heard it, not with her ears, but with her bones. The vet had told him some things earlier that day, stuff she'd found on Roxy's x-rays, an old fracture in her back leg, healed wrong, like it had never been treated properly, scars around her ribs, possibly from tight harnesses, or worse, and on her side, what looked like a burned scar, small but deep. These weren't the wounds of a working dog. They were the marks of someone who had been left behind and hurt for it. The man who adopted her after the K-9 officer's death. No one could find him now. The address was fake. The phone number disconnected. It was like he'd disappeared and taken Roxy's peace with him. Daniel didn't care about pressing charges. He wasn't interested in revenge. All he wanted was to make sure Roxy never had to feel that way again. A few days later, something strange happened. Daniel was cleaning out the shed when he found an old tennis ball in one of the storage bins. Not just any ball. It was bright yellow, scuffed, worn down to its rubber layer, but still bouncy. He walked back inside and set it down beside Roxy. She stared at it, didn't move, didn't touch it, just stared. Daniel sat on the couch and watched. After a long minute, she stood up slowly and walked over. She sniffed it, nudged it with her nose, then carefully picked it up in her mouth. She carried it to her bed, laid down, and rested her head on top of it like a pillow. Daniel didn't say anything. He didn't have to. It was memory, comfort, something familiar in a world that had gone cold. That weekend, Daniel decided to try something bold. He found an old K-9 training video online. Nothing intense, just simple commands. He wanted to understand her better, maybe spark something in her. He stood in the backyard, Roxy by his side. Sit. She looked at him, then sat. He blinked. Down. She laid flat. Stay. She didn't move. Not even an inch. Daniel's throat tightened. She remembered everything, even after all the pain, even after months on the street. Her mind hadn't forgotten who she was. She had been trained to serve, to protect, to trust. And now she was starting to do that again. Not because she was ordered to, but because she wanted to. But the biggest moment came the following Tuesday. Daniel had taken her for a walk around the neighborhood. The sun was out. Birds were singing. It felt peaceful, almost too peaceful. They were turning the corner past an old abandoned lot when Daniel noticed something. A man, young, nervous looking, was pacing near the bus stop. He kept glancing at passing cars, hands fidgeting. Daniel felt Roxy tense beside him. Then it happened fast. The man stepped into the street and tried to snatch a woman's purse as she crossed the sidewalk. She screamed. He ran. Without a word, Roxy bolted. Daniel shouted after her, but she was already chasing. Fast, controlled, powerful. She cut off the thief's path like a missile, skidding into his legs and knocking him off balance. He fell hard, scrambled up, and ran again, but not far. Roxy stood between him and the street, barking once, loud and sharp. People were watching now. Phones were out. The man hesitated, then dropped the bag and raised his hands. The police arrived a few minutes later. Roxy didn't move until Daniel called her back. She returned calmly, sat at his feet. The officer who took the report looked at Daniel. Is that AK-9? Daniel smiled. She was. Still is, I guess. That night, Daniel got a call from someone he never expected to hear from, a retired officer who had worked with Roxy's original handler. His name was Mike Henderson. I saw the footage. Mike said, "That's Roxy. No doubt in my mind." They talked for nearly an hour. Mike told him about her old days, how she was top of her unit, how she once sniffed out a hidden weapons cache buried under 6 feet of concrete, how Officer Keller, her first handler, called her his shadow. She never let anyone touch her except James. Mike said quietly, after he died, I guess she never really recovered. None of us did. Daniel listened in silence. When he hung up, he walked over to Roxy and sat down beside her on the floor. He stroked her back gently. You were someone's shadow once. Now you're mine. From that point on, something changed in both of them. Daniel no longer saw her as broken. He saw her as brave, strong, rebuilding herself, one quiet moment at a time. And Roxy, she stopped pacing, stopped staring out the door at night, because she was home now. She still has that scar on her leg, and the old limp. It never fully went away. But when she walks beside Daniel now, there's no hesitation in her step. She's not looking back anymore. She's looking forward. It had been nearly a month since Daniel found her, and if someone had told him just a few weeks ago that his quiet, construction-filled life would suddenly revolve around a retired K9 German shepherd with a limp and a mysterious past, he would have laughed. But now, he couldn't imagine a day without her. Yet despite the progress, despite the small wins, like the tail wags, the soft barks, and the way she'd sometimes nudge his hand when she wanted attention, Daniel couldn't shake one lingering question. Who hurt her after she was retired and why? He had seen the records, talked to the vet, even spoken to Officer Henderson, who told him about Roxy's deep loyalty and intense bond with her former partner, James Keller. But after Keller's tragic death, the department had followed protocol. They rehomed Roxy, gave her a chance at a normal life. So why had it all gone so wrong? And who was the man listed on the adoption papers? The one who disappeared without a trace? Daniel didn't have the resources of a cop. He didn't have access to databases or investigative tools. But he had something else: time, and now purpose. One rainy afternoon, he sat down with a notepad and the faded copy of Roxy's adoption paperwork. Name Derek Miles. Address 1347 Parkside Lane. Phone number disconnected. Adoption date 16 months ago. Daniel had tried calling the number. No answer. So this time, he went the old-fashioned way. He drove to the address. What he found there, it wasn't what he expected. The house was abandoned. The grass out front was waist-high. Windows boarded up. Mail spilling from a rusted box. Clearly, no one had lived there in a long time. But then he saw something strange. On the porch, nailed to the wall, was a thin piece of wood, about the size of a license plate. Painted on it, in crooked letters, "No dogs allowed." Not again. Daniel's blood turned cold. What did that mean? Was it some kind of warning? A message? A leftover grudge? He took photos, knocked on a neighbor's door. An old woman answered. "Oh, that guy," she said, squinting. "Moved out almost a year ago. Left in the middle of the night. Didn't say goodbye to nobody. Always had the blinds shut. We never even knew he had a dog." Daniel asked if she knew where he went. She didn't, but she remembered one thing. He used to get visits, every week, from a man in a uniform. Looked official, maybe from animal control, or the shelter. That was a lead. Daniel thanked her and drove straight to the shelter listed on Roxy's paperwork. The receptionist was polite but skeptical. "We usually don't give out information about past adoptions," she said. "I understand," Daniel said. "But this dog, Roxy, she was abandoned, left in a trap to die, and the person who adopted her might have done it." He slid the vet's photos across the desk. The receptionist's face shifted. She excused herself and returned with a supervisor. After a short back and forth, they agreed to help quietly. What they revealed made Daniel's stomach twist. Apparently, after the adoption, Derek Miles had made multiple visits back to the shelter, not to bring Roxy, but to ask for medication, tranquilizers, strong ones. He claimed the dog was too alert, too intense, that she kept trying to run. They warned him, told him that K9 dogs need time, patience. He never listened. Eventually, he stopped coming, and now it made sense. The limp, the fear, the deep silence. Roxy hadn't just been abandoned. She had been drugged, shut down, silenced. Someone had tried to erase her identity. Daniel drove home that night in silence. He walked through the door and saw her sitting on the rug, eyes calm, tail thumping softly. She tilted her head at him, and suddenly, he couldn't hold it in. He dropped to his knees and hugged her tightly. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "You didn't deserve any of that." She rested her head on his shoulder, and in that moment, he promised himself one thing. He would never let anyone hurt her again. But there was one more twist to come. It happened during a regular vet visit. About 2 weeks later, Roxy had gained some weight. Her coat was shinier. Her leg, while still stiff, was healing. Everything was moving forward, until the vet said something strange. "She's been chipped twice," the vet said. Daniel blinked. "What?" "There's a second microchip, not the police department one. This one's more recent." That didn't make sense. The second chip had been implanted after her adoption. Daniel asked to scan it again. When the vet read the number aloud, Daniel took it down and started calling. The chip was registered under a private security firm based in a neighboring state. After a dozen calls and hold music, he finally reached someone. "Yes," the woman on the line said. "That chip belongs to a German shepherd named Sasha. Retired police dog, briefly trained for private K9 contract work." "Why do you ask?" Daniel was stunned. "Because she's with me right now, and her name isn't Sasha. It's Roxy." The truth unfolded slowly. Apparently, after her adoption, Derek Miles sold her to a private firm, illegally. She was trained briefly, but failed their temperament test, likely due to trauma. They chipped her under a false name and set her back. Only Derek didn't want her anymore, so he dumped her in a trap like garbage. That revelation made Daniel sick. All this time, Roxy had been carrying not just the weight of loss, but betrayal by people who should have protected her, who should have stood by her. And yet she never gave up. That night, Daniel stared at her as she lay curled by the fire. She was watching him too, calm, present, still trusting, still trying. And he realized something simple, something powerful. She wasn't broken. She was surviving, not by chance, but by choice. From that point on, Daniel stopped trying to fix her. He stopped wondering what she used to be. Instead, he focused on what she was becoming. And day by day, she bloomed. Her tail wagged more often. Her steps became steadier. She'd start barking at the mailman, not out of fear, but playfulness. She'd wake Daniel up in the morning with soft licks to his hand. She even tried swimming again at a nearby lake, hesitant at first, then bold. The fear didn't vanish, but she no longer lived in it, because now she had something no one had ever truly given her before. A home, not a job, not a cage, not a handler who might disappear. A real home, with someone who would never use her, never betray her, just love her. And Daniel, he didn't just gain a pet, he gained a friend, a protector, a soul that had once been shattered but refused to stay that way. It happened on a quiet Sunday afternoon. The sky was calm, painted in soft blues and golds. Daniel had taken Roxy to the lake, not for training, not for therapy, just to breathe. She'd grown to love this place, the trees, the water, the way it smelled like summer even when it wasn't. He sat on the dock with his boots off, toes grazing the cool surface. Roxy was lying nearby, chewing gently on a stick, not to destroy it, but more like she was thinking. She had these quiet moments now, where she looked so peaceful, it almost hurt to remember where she'd come from. Daniel leaned back, soaking in the warmth. Pretty good for a Sunday, huh, girl? Roxy thumped her tail once, but in the next second, everything changed. A scream pierced the air, then another, sharp, high-pitched, desperate. Daniel bolted upright. It came from the woods, just beyond the tree line. Then help, somebody please, help. Roxy was already on her feet, body stiff, ears locked forward. Daniel didn't hesitate. He ran. Roxy followed. They reached the edge of the forest trail in seconds. That's when Daniel saw it. A little girl, no older than 7, standing halfway down the slope near the edge of the stream, frozen in panic. And next to her, a man, large, angry, grabbing at her arm. I told you not to run off, he snapped. You're gonna learn today. Hey, Daniel shouted, charging forward. The man whipped around, startled, then let go of the girl's arm just long enough for her to break free. She ran up the hill, straight toward Daniel, sobbing, but the man didn't back off. He squared up, stepping toward them with clenched fists. You got a problem, man. Daniel stood his ground, shielding the girl, but it was Roxy who stepped forward. And what Daniel saw next, he would never forget. Her stance changed completely. This wasn't the quiet, broken dog he'd rescued from the alley. This was the K-9 officer she used to be. Tail stiff, head high, shoulders squared, eyes locked. She positioned herself between Daniel and the man, protective, commanding, and utterly fearless. The man hesitated, took a single step back, but Roxy barked, loud and deep, a sound Daniel had never heard from her before. It echoed through the woods like a cannon shot, and that was all it took. The man turned and ran, full sprint, no hesitation. He didn't even look back. Roxy didn't chase. She didn't have to. She had done exactly what she was trained to do, and more importantly, what she chose to do, because this time, no one had ordered her. No badge, no leash, no command. She did it because she cared, because this was her home now, and she was protecting it. After calling the authorities, it turned out the man had been reported missing from another county. A known repeat offender, had warrants. The little girl was his niece, and she'd been missing for 3 days. The news picked it up. Photos of Roxy standing proudly beside the officers made it to the local paper. The headline, Retired K-9 Saves Child, Captures Hearts. Daniel was offered interviews, TV appearances, even an offer to train Roxy back into private security work. He turned them all down. She's done enough, he told them. Now it's her time to just be loved. That night, after all the buzz had died down, Daniel sat with her by the fire, the house quiet again. He looked at her, truly looked. No more flinching, no more pacing, just peace. She was resting, her head on her paws, but her eyes were watching him, like always, like a shadow, finally at rest. That day at the lake changed everything. Not just because she saved a life, not just because she faced danger again, but because it proved what Daniel had always believed deep down. She wasn't a used-up dog. She wasn't a failed K9. She was still a hero, and always had been. All she needed was someone to believe in her again. In the weeks that followed the rescue at the lake, life didn't go back to normal. It got better. Not louder, not busier, just fuller. Daniel and Roxy still did the same simple things they always had. Morning walks, lazy afternoons in the garage, quiet evenings on the porch. But now, every moment felt heavier in the best way, because they both knew, they both remembered, and they both had finally healed. Daniel often found himself staring at her when she was asleep, stretched out on the rug, tail twitching with dreams, the firelight flickering softly across her face. And he'd smile, because there was something so peaceful about her now. The tension that once lived in her muscles, gone. The fear that used to hide in her eyes, faded. In its place was something he didn't know dogs could carry so clearly. Gratitude, not just for food or shelter, but for love, for safety, for belonging. Sometimes people would stop them on walks and ask, "Is that the dog from the news? She's beautiful. Was she really abandoned? Did she really save that little girl?" Daniel always gave the same answer. "Yes, and she saved me too." See, what most people didn't understand was that this wasn't just a story about a dog being rescued. It was a story about a soul finding its way back. Roxy had every reason to give up. She was betrayed by the very people meant to protect her, abandoned, hurt, forgotten, and yet she survived. Not because someone forced her to, but because deep inside, she held onto one fragile, unbreakable thing. Hope. Hope that not everyone was cruel. Hope that somewhere, someone would see her, really see her, and not turn away. And that someone was Daniel, a man who didn't know what he was looking for until he found it curled up behind a dumpster, too weak to bark. And from that single act of compassion, a bond was born. Not just man and dog, but survivor and survivor. It's easy to look at animals like Roxy and see them as broken, too old, too damaged, too complicated. But what this story shows, what Roxy shows, is that healing isn't about fixing what's been lost. It's about choosing to love what remains. And when someone finally does, miracles happen. Daniel never needed a hero. He never planned to bring home a former K9 or uncover a mystery or end up in a local newspaper. He just saw someone in pain and decided to stop. That's all it took. One moment, one choice, to look a little closer, to care a little deeper. And in return, he didn't just save a dog. He found his best friend. They say dogs are man's best friend, but sometimes man has to earn it. Sometimes man has to prove that the world isn't all pain and broken promises. That loyalty still means something. That second chances are real. And Daniel, he gave Roxy exactly that. A second chance, a final home, and a love strong enough to silence the past. If this story touched you, subscribe for more real stories that prove love can change everything.